In order to safeguard your tranquility and future, there are 5 realities that you must be aware of before remarrying over the age of 70. Have you been considering getting married again? But on the other hand, you have a nagging feeling that you should hold off? That gut feeling can be more astute than you give it credit for. The reason for this is that although love in later age can be beautiful, soothing, and profoundly healing, it also comes with obstacles that the majority of people never discuss. You've had a rich and eventful life. In addition to establishing routines and connections, you may have even brought up children. You may have lost someone you loved very much. In addition, the introduction of a new person into your life, particularly in this present moment, modifies more than just your name or your mailing address. The flow of your money is altered as a result. It causes a change in the dynamics of the family. It also requires a level of clarity that a lot of people don't realize they need until they're already in a situation that's too deep. Before getting remarried, there are 5 things that every person over the age of 70 ought to be aware of. And we are going to go over them in this video. The purpose of these is not to frighten you. They have the purpose of directing you, guarding you, and providing you with a sense of calm. Love at this age is not the same as love at the age of 30. In this case, it is not about starting from scratch. The process involves combining what has already been constructed. Moreover, this is the reason why the hazards, if disregarded, can feel more weighty and more long-lasting. Stay here with us till the very finish, since the ultimate truth can be the one that the majority of people never ever contemplate. It may, however, prevent you from experiencing years of silent sorrow. So, whether you are already in a relationship, contemplating whether or not to say yes, or simply interested in learning more about what it means to remarry later in life, this film is suitable for you. Let's get started. Is the first. Little is said about the legal and financial repercussions, but the majority of individuals feel that love is all that is required. But if you are over the age of 70 and are thinking about getting married again, the things you do not know about the legal and financial repercussions might slowly destroy the life you have established for yourself. Your Social Security benefits, your will, your pension, and even your tax bracket can all be impacted by another marriage. Remarrying might also have an effect on your pension. Even if love could appear to be the most significant aspect, it is crucial to remember that it is not. These alterations have the potential to result in significant issues, not just for you but also for the individuals who are dependent on you, trustworthy of you, or who stand to inherit from you. Many elderly people, for instance, are unaware of the fact that remarrying after the age of 60 might have an impact on the Social Security benefits received by widows and widowers. In the event that you legally remarry after receiving spousal benefits from a deceased partner, it is possible that the amount of such payments will be decreased or eliminated entirely. In addition, pensions from prior wives, particularly those from the government or the military, can be affected. Additionally, if you have already established a will or trust with your children in mind, remarriage has the potential to legally invalidate those wishes if fresh documents are not designed. Unexpectedly, the assets that you had planned to be passed down to the next generation can be rerouted without your knowledge. When I was younger, I knew a man named Carl who was 76 years old and had been a widower for about 10 years. He fell in love with a wonderful woman, and the two of them got married in a low-key ceremony with little to no paperwork or preparation. Years later, after Carl had gone away, his children were shocked to learn that his pension benefits had been transferred fully to his new wife. This resulted in confusion, animosity, and an irreparable loss of financial resources. Carl hadn't committed any wrongdoing at all. Simply put, he was unaware that the regulations had been altered. Your taxes, for example, can change in ways that you are not expecting. For some people, getting married may result in a reduction in their tax liability, however. For others, particularly older citizens who have retirement income, property, or investment accounts, it may actually cause you to be placed in a higher tax category. You might no longer be eligible for certain deductions or perks that were accessible to you when you filed your taxes as a single person or as a widow. These alterations do not take place with any drama or prior warning. Forms, policies, and documentation are the places where they take place in the background. It is possible that you will not consider reviewing until it is late. Protection of your paper is an important part of maintaining your peace of mind at this point in your life. Because you have put in so much effort and spent so much time. You cannot allow your final wishes to be undone by a marriage certificate that you do not completely comprehend. The possibility of love endures. The beauty of commitment must not be lost. Do not, however, allow the emotional aspects of marriage to obscure your perception of the practical aspects. Because once those components have shifted, it is not always possible to reverse them. When we think about remarriage, it is simple to anticipate a second shot at love. However, there are emotional needs that change as we get older that are not immediately obvious. It was the laughing. It's the company itself. It is the feeling of being required once more. However, there is something that too few people actually utter out loud. It is that the emotional needs that were the driving force for your first marriage are no longer the ones that currently suit you best. There is a possibility that you will not be looking for the same kind of connection that you required when you were 35 or 40 years old. What was once about constructing a life together is now about keeping the life that you have already constructed with care, equilibrium, and clarity. The classic idea of romance is not what many elderly people are looking for in a romantic partner. It is a matter of respect. It is a form of emotional companionship that does not bring with it the burdensome expectation of day-to-day dependence. In addition, when these more profound requirements are not recognized in a straightforward manner, they are buried beneath a flood of emotions. The feeling of being alone, remembering the past, or even shame from the want to reconnect with someone again. If you hurry into remarriage without first identifying your new emotional truth, however, you may find yourself in a state of bewilderment, disappointment, or perhaps even a gradual loss of your freedom. Helen, who was 74 years old at the time, was a woman I once met who promptly remarried after the death of her husband of 45 years. The new person she was dating was kind, generous, and loyal. On the other hand, she quickly came to the realization that what she truly desired was not another man to take care of her. A companion that respected her space, supported her decisions, and understood that she was not looking to start over was what she desired in a possible romantic partner. She was looking to make progress in her life. They ultimately renegotiated their dynamic, although it took some time for it to happen. As two older people who choose each other without the need to define their worth via each other, rather than as a husband and wife in the traditional sense of the word. One inquiry ought to be the starting point for remarriage at this point in one's life. On an emotional level, what do I truly require at this moment? It could be in the form of someone with whom you can share meals or someone who makes you laugh. A travel companion or someone who simply listens without trying to cure the problem could be the ideal partner. All of these are necessary requirements, but they are distinct from the emotional dependencies that people have. There are a lot of younger couples trying to get married. In addition, if you do not identify them at an early stage, you can end up agreeing to a form of partnership that gives you more responsibility than pleasure. Another fact is that the amount of emotional energy you have right now is limited. It's possible that you no longer have the capacity to provide continuous emotional care or to successfully resolve serious conflicts. But that is not egotistical, rather, it is wisdom. You are now aware of the things that you can and cannot tolerate in your life. You have gained an understanding of the consequences of remaining silent, harboring animosity, and experiencing emotional imbalance. And if you do it again, this time, you should do it from a place of self-awareness rather than wanting. Since longing is something that eventually passes away, clarity, however, survives. Therefore, before you provide your answer, you should ask yourself, do I want peace or do I want a partner? There are occasions when you can have both, but there are also instances when pursuing one causes you to steal the other. And at this point in time, tranquility is not a luxury but rather a requirement. I would appreciate it if you could use the second comment section below to let me know that you are continuing viewing this video and that you are finding these insights to be helpful. I strongly suggest that you subscribe to the channel and activate the bell if you have not already done so. This will ensure that you do not miss any videos. With your assistance, we are able to continue producing high-quality content that will both inform and inspire you. Let's proceed with our plans now. Third on the list is blended families and the conflict that they bring about in the background. When two people in their 70s make the decision to be married, it may appear to be a straightforward choice between two couples' hearts. In actuality, however, there are frequently a great number of additional folks involved, and not all of them are delighted to celebrate. The presence of adult children, grandchildren, extended family members, and relatives from both sides of the family might subtly bring to the surface feelings of emotional complexity, financial skepticism, or even anger. What starts out as an optimistic partnership can rapidly turn into a source of unforeseen strain if you are not prepared for the friction that may arise as a result of the circumstances. The fact that each individual brings decades of personal history, pain, and expectations to the table is what makes blended families unique at this point of life. Blended families have been around for quite some time. It's possible that your children are still working through the grief of losing or not having their other parent. There is a possibility that they will experience uncertainty over the intentions of your new spouse, as well as the implications of this shift for their inheritance, their position in your life, or the family traditions that they have grown to value. Even if no one expresses it explicitly, the tension frequently manifests itself in the form of hesitancy, passive resistance, or a developing distance that is difficult to explain. I know a man named Gerald who was 78 years old and had remarried after being widower for a variety of years. Even though his daughter, who was now in her 40s, was friendly to his new wife, there was a subtle change in the way they interacted with each other. There were fewer phone calls and shorter visits. It wasn't until one day that Gerald finally understood what was going on. She acknowledged that she had experienced feelings of displacement, not because his new wife had committed any wrongdoing, but rather because he had failed to make room for her feelings during the process. That straightforward chat brought about a sea change. It was not because it resolved every problem, rather, it was because it brought worries that had been buried to the surface. In addition, the conflict may not always be emotional but rather financial in nature. It is possible for families to experience uncomfortable misunderstandings, broken trust, and long-term estrangement when they witness the rewriting of wills or the redirection of assets. Being honest with your family is something you owe them, even if it does not mean that you owe them every decision. And the opportunity to pose questions prior to the implementation of changes? Even though these interactions are awkward, avoiding them will not result in any harm being transferred. It merely postpones the event. It is important to have a candid conversation with your children and other members of your immediate family before you remarry. Inform them of your motivations, your hopes, and the boundaries you have set for yourself. Reassure them in areas where you are able to, and allow for their discomfort in areas where you are unable to. You do not require their authorization, rather, you will require their presence in your life for a significantly longer period of time than you will require their approval for a single action. The reason for this is that the success of your marriage will not only be dependent on the two of you in the end. Your ability to successfully traverse the delicate dance of honoring the past while also constructing something new will determine the outcome. Furthermore, this is not solely about love. Emotional leadership is described in this way. And at your age, you have had sufficient experience to realize that the discussions that are the most difficult to have are frequently the ones that lead to the most profound peace. Fourth, the function of caregiving that no one anticipates having to play. A return to love can be a reassuring experience when you are in your 70s or 80s. It would be nice to have someone to talk to while eating breakfast, someone to walk hand in hand with, and someone to spend a peaceful evening with once the noise of everyday life has subsided. However, What many elderly people fail to properly take into consideration is how rapidly companionship may transform into caregiving, and how unprepared the majority of people are for what the responsibilities of caregiving actually entail. When you remarry at this age, you are making more than simply a new spouse for yourself. In addition to this, you might be taking on their future medical requirements while putting your own health in the hands of another else. A trip to the doctor and the collection of a prescription are the first steps in the process. As time goes on, it is possible that one of you will find yourself filling pillboxes, assisting with bathing, preparing meals, or managing appointments. And while it is possible to do these things out of love, it is also important to note that they need a lot of energy, physical, emotional, and mental, which is something that very few people have in their later years. I once knew a woman named Gloria who was 80 years old and had wedded a man whom she cherished passionately. At the same time, he was witty and powerful, but within a span of 2 years, his health began to rapidly deteriorate. In the middle of the night, she had to wake up to assist him in going to the bathroom. And she had to make decisions regarding his medical care that she had never expected having to do again. She found herself lifting him in and out of chairs. "I wish we'd talk more about what might come," she stated very frequently, but she did not feel any regret about her love for him. That is the part that the majority of people overlook. Getting married later in life does not place you in a position where you are constructing a future for yourself. You are in charge of managing what is left of it. However, this does not make it any less significant. Not only that, but it also makes it more holy. On the other hand, this does imply that you have to ask the questions that no one wants to ask. Suppose one of us becomes ill. What will happen? In the event that one of us declines, who can handle the finances? How emotionally prepared are we to take on the role of caretakers once more? There is no compulsion to do so, rather, it is out of real readiness. The act of providing care is more than just a list of responsibilities. The relationship is altered as a result. Dependency is created as a result. It is a test of patience. In addition, it brings back previous feelings of loss for many elderly people, such as recollections of caring for a spouse who has passed away or thoughts of being a burden to future generations. It is possible for these feelings to develop in silence if there are no honest chats at the beginning of the relationship. This can transform what started out as love into a subtle resentment or an overpowering exhaustion that neither party anticipated. It is for this reason that you should have an honest conversation before you remarry. Not only about who you are today but also about who you are going to become. Plans for long-term care should be discussed. The topics of mobility, memory, driving, and even housing should be discussed. Are you going to remain in your house? Are you going to move closer to your growing children? When the time comes, do you intend to hire assistance? Do you intend to attempt to handle everything on your own? You will not be protected from the repercussions if you choose to ignore the questions. But there are no answers that are foolproof. And if you are still watching this video and you find these insights to be helpful, please leave a remark below. Number 4. To let me know that you are here, I strongly suggest that you subscribe to the channel and activate the bell if you have not already done so. This will ensure that you do not miss any videos. With your assistance, we are able to continue producing high-quality content that will both inform and inspire you. Let's proceed with our plans now. The 5th point is the significance of allowing yourself to recover before starting over. After the age of 70, loneliness can feel more intense than it did in the past. The absence of someone to share life with becomes more evident with each passing season. And the house is quieter. The days feel longer, and the days are longer. When one is in that environment, it is normal to look for a connection, to yearn for friendship, tenderness, or even just the presence of another voice in the room. However, if you have not yet fully recovered from your past, whether that means grieving the loss of a spouse, recovering from a divorce, or letting go of old animosity, then remarriage may become a strategy of avoiding your suffering rather than a way of addressing it. In the hope that it may satisfy an emotional need, many elderly people remarry, Additionally, despite the fact that a new relationship could bring you happiness, solace, or even laughter, they are not capable of bearing the burden of your unresolved sadness. It is possible that when we remarry from a place of emotional imbalance, we may unwittingly lay unrealistic expectations on the other person. We may want them to be more understanding, more available, or more like to the person we had lost. And when they are unable to live up to those unspoken expectations, anger might develop. This is not because they have done something wrong, rather, it is because we have not gone through the process of saying goodbye to the life that we have left behind. In my memory, there was a man named Eugene who was 83 years old and married a widow only 2 years after the death of his wife of 50 years. He made all of the appropriate statements. It was his desire to move on. He was a firm believer in the concept of second chances. Nonetheless, he later acknowledged that he continued to have conversations with his late wife before going to bed each night. It was in the closet that he stored her garments. On a necklace that he wore around his neck, he continued to wear her wedding ring. He never urged his new wife to let go, but she constantly had the impression that she was living next to a ghost that she was surrounded by. And soon, the effects of that distance became apparent. This does not mean that one should forget. That does not mean that you should shut the door on your history. It involves coming to terms with it, so that when you say yes once more, it is not a reaction to what you have lost, but rather a response to what you are truly prepared to receive. To heal, you must first ask yourself some difficult questions. Have I moved on from my grief? Am I getting married in order to get away from something or to start something new? If I had reached my full potential, would I still want this individual to be a part of my life? Because the sort of love that lasts in your 70s and 80s is not the kind that completes you. One of the most generous things you can offer a potential spouse is a version of yourself that does not anticipate being rescued, healed, or filled up. This is because the kind of love that lasts in adulthood is not the one that fulfills you. It's the kind that acknowledges what you've already matured into and then gently brings you closer to that state. Take some time to give your narrative some thought before you get married again. Speak with a trusted friend or a professional counselor. If you have lost someone, you should still write them letters. Even if you never send them, it is very normal for you to experience feelings of melancholy even now. Getting rid of grief is not the goal of healing. In order for love to stand beside it without any rivalry, it is necessary to create room for it, mostly due to the fact that the relationships that are the most beautiful later in life are not the ones who attempt to start over. The ones who say, "I see your past," are the ones of this type. I pay respect to your trip, and I am not here to take the place of anyone else, rather, I am here to walk beside you for as long as we are given. The kind of love that you are experiencing does not hurry, and it never demands you to pretend that you are not already mending. Simply said, it stays in place at the location where you are. Lastly, some thoughts. I would want for you to take a moment of silence as we come to the end of this film to contemplate the true meaning of the term remarriage. Not only in the abstract, but also in your everyday life, your heart, and your future. It is not the intention of these 5 realities to frighten you away from love, rather, they are meant to get you ready for it, mostly due to the fact that at this point in time, love is no longer about slipping into a sensation. Comprehending the life that you are welcoming another person into is of utmost importance. Protecting what you've established, reflecting on where you've been, and making thoughtful decisions about what you bring forward are all important aspects of this. Whether it's figuring out how to deal with changes in your finances, comprehending how your emotional requirements have evolved, navigating the reality of blended families, getting ready for the possibility of providing care, or making sure that you have fully healed before opening your heart again. Each of these truths provides you with something that is extremely helpful in terms of clarity. And it is clarity that provides a space for love to flourish. One that is free from the obscurity of confusion or regret. You deserve companionship that is tailored to your life in its current state, not in the way it was in the past. You have earned the right to have tranquility in your home, to have confidence in the choices you make, and to have happiness in your older years that is not dependent on the stability of anybody else. The joy that you feel can be a part of remarriage, but only if you approach it with both eyes open and both feet firmly planted in self-respect. Therefore, before you agree to anything else, you should first agree to yourself. Respond affirmatively to your own comprehension, your own timing, and your own set of boundaries, mostly due to the fact that when you are firmly established in your truth, the love that you attract will be better, not louder or more visually appealing, but better. That type of love that does not force you to hurry, that does not deplete you, and that does not require you to be anything other than who you are at your core. In addition, if you found that this movie provided you with something to contemplate, whether it was a reminder, a challenge, or a calm reassurance, then you should carry it with you. Give it some time to rest. You should allow it to influence the next discussion you have, the next decision you make, or the next tale you tell to someone who is in need of hearing it for the first time. We appreciate you being here with us today. It would be wonderful if you could get in touch with us. Please leave a comment below and tell us about one item you discovered today and how you intend to put it to use in your life right now. We place a high value on your opinions, so please do not be reluctant to share them with us. Our inspiration and encouragement are greatly increased as a result of reading your remarks. I would appreciate it if you would like, subscribe, and share this video if you found it to be informative and enjoyable. With your assistance, we are able to continue producing high-quality content that will both inform and inspire you. We appreciate you taking the time to watch, and we hope to see you in the future video.